guys, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you have not seen these videos before, welcome and welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. I want to go into a little flow, but I really want to give an energy update based on my own individual unique experience and expression. And the reason I want to do that is because it's just kind of crazy energies constantly. So let's talk about that just for a moment. It's good for us to check in with ourselves and ask ourselves, how am I feeling right now? Because sometimes we get so wrapped up in taking care of our family or taking care of our friends or work that we overexert ourselves and then we become exhausted. And by the time we realize that we're exhausted or we haven't been eating right or we haven't been going outside and grounding, it's too late because our immune system is then, it's like shut down. I'm getting goosebumps. Apparently, this is really an important subject for everybody right now. Really take care of our bodies. I know everybody is saying this. I've been saying this to everybody that I've been working with in every video that I've been doing, but I really see it as so important right now, more important than it's maybe ever been for most people. Mostly because there is so much stress in our environment right now. We're getting it from all angles, all directions. And so our first line of defense is our body in the physical, so to speak. And that's not necessarily true. That's only true from one perspective. That's not the whole truth. Obviously, our first line of defense is our auric field and our thoughts and where we're vibrating at. But if we're not taking care of our vessel, all that other stuff doesn't matter because ultimately we break down. We go into this does not compute. I'm hearing we misfire. And it causes crankiness. It causes us to react. Whereas if we are balanced and harmonized within our body, within our skin suit, and we're aware of what it is that where we're at energetically, what happens is people then get angry. They react. They're triggered easier, and I noticed this is a big truth for me right now. So oftentimes I will tell other people and give them tips and hints to maybe better their situation or their reality or shed some more light on where that person might be imbalanced or over activated in and so on and so forth. And then I forget to do it myself. So we all go through that sometimes. Okay. That was the biggest thing. I mean, not the biggest, but one of the biggest things. And I could go on for hours on this video about all of the energies that are coming in. First of all, we're getting blasted constantly from my perspective in just energy in general. We're getting blasted by, sorry, my internet's I think there might be a solar flare going on today, or there's definitely been, there was one last week, there was one the week before. And I don't know if I want to call it a solar flare every single time, but there's been some solar activity, we'll just say. So the solar activity also has an effect on our bodies. I keep freezing. Let me pause this for a moment. What does that mean? Well, obviously technology is affected by the solar activity. Why wouldn't our bodies be affected by it as well? So we have this heightened activity all around us from our environment, and I'm talking nature environment, the planet that we live on, and it can cause us to feel tired. It can cause, we're electrical beings. Everything's electricity, but charge, right? So we're electrical beings. And so as this incoming energy lights up the planet, lights our bodies up, we may need more rest. We may need more water. We may need more nutrients to help support and balance the influx of energies that are coming in, to help us to stabilize in order to receive the energies and not just shut down or, react. So headaches, heart palpitations, lack of sleep. How have you guys been sleeping? I haven't been sleeping. I slept last night. I took a melatonin, but Bottom line is there's a lot going on. We've got the earth is bringing us uploads. And what does that mean? It just means energy. There's the energy that the earth is offering us to support us. And I know there's science behind it. And I know that there's a lot of esoteric, okay, we're getting uploads and downloads from the sun and it's because of this, but just keeping it simple is another reminder that I keep getting. And I keep getting this in session too. So I'll talk about this in just a moment. Whenever I have 5 different, synchronicities or common denominators, I like to share them with the collective because it's something that obviously a collective of beings are possibly experiencing and could benefit from. So we're keeping it simple. We don't have to overcomplicate things. And I'll talk about fear because that's the biggest thing right now that I wanted to get into. Okay. So we're getting these uploads from the earth. And without me going into what exactly that means, it doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but you know what I mean. It matters how we respond, how we are adapting to the adaptations that our planet and solar system are making based on our expansion and growth. So if we are unable to adapt physically, we are then unable, our vehicle is unable to respond in the best way possible. So again, it's all about physicality right now from one perspective, but this also directly affects our emotions. So let me back up before I jump all over the place because I could jump so many different places right now. With this, okay, I want to go into 5 different places. Our responsibility about this. For those of us that are aware that these things are going on, we're just aware. We know, we feel it. Anyways, it comes with more responsibility. That's no pressure. It just means we are aware. We are the ones that are sensing things. We are the ones that are holding the line. For those that are unaware, everybody's being affected by this from one perspective. They just don't necessarily know it. So being patient and conscientious of where we're at tells us, oh, okay, I'm getting blasted right now. This person may not think they're getting blasted. They may not be aware that they're getting blasted, but when they get grumpy with us, our partners, our spouses, or vice versa, we can be more like, oh, okay, you know what? They're probably experiencing things that they don't understand. And rather than them being aware and working with it, they're resisting it. They're reacting to it. And this is what's going on collectively. I kind of know I jumped all over the place. So it's even more important for those of us that are that have been doing this work for a while. And I know there is this sense of really, people, come on. Could you just get with the program here? Because sometimes it can be, especially when we're in a place in our own processing, when we're in ego, when we're going through a transition, when we've got a lot of stuff going on, it's easy for us to not be in compassion and not be in our hearts because we might be integrating ego, shadow, anger, frustration, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So then we're triggered by the fact that they are being what we might see as irresponsible. But with more power comes more responsibility. So we have this ability and capability. Everybody has access and ability to do this, to transition, but not everybody is aware that they are beautiful creator beings. So those of us that are aware, it can seem like we're holding the load, right? We're like, okay, but we don't have to. So that is a misnomer, is what I'm being guided to share. It's not to say that we're wrong for thinking that or feeling that way, but I've been witnessing a lot, and myself included, at times, a lot of light workers going, just wake up already, just figure it out, do what you're supposed to do. So I don't have to. It's almost like when you know too much, right? You know what's going on. And so you see the others that aren't aware of what's going on. And that can be from the ego, frustrating. And when we get frustrated, it makes us more tired and it affects our body. because it is a chemical exchange. So I'm not saying, by the way, I want to just back up for a moment and say, don't be frustrated. Don't get angry, because we're humans. I get frustrated and angry sometimes too, maybe more than I'd like to admit. But it is about balancing out those frustrations. Let me just pause this for a moment. Okay, background light was making this ring light. They were fighting each other. So I don't know what I did, but let me pause. I'll get back into focus. I'm in such flow right now that all of that was like a deeper layer and deeper meaning. Okay, back in focus. So it's symbolic because we got light fighting light right now, and it's really creating this blurry, where do I go? What do I do? How do I respond? And by the way, you guys, it's just, this is what happens when you're in flow. It's like everything can have a deeper layer or a deeper meaning if we choose to pay attention to it. So the words that we're using sometimes are our subconscious or our higher self saying, hey, let's play with this a little bit. And then that was my last video. What it was all about wordplay and what we're telling ourselves. But I'll do another video about that soon. So what happens is, yes, it affects us physically, because then we are feeding that frustration by putting things on our shoulders or on our backs or holding on to things that we don't need to. There is this old paradigm that is in the process of being dissolved for many of us. And I want to just come back to that in just a moment, because there's so many layers. That we have to stabilize the field. We have to hold on strong. We can't react. And we're doing all this work for everybody else. And that is ego from one perspective, but it's also things that we've been taught and we've been told. And some part of the spiritual community from one perspective has kind of reinforced this into our belief system. Like, well, we are, right, aware of what's going on. Therefore, we're the ones that are holding the line and being responsible. And quite frankly, that's not necessarily true. Sorry, I just heard my husband going, who's this Frank guy? Again, the words that we're using. So it's not necessarily the truth, because in reality, there's children that are helping to balance it out. And even those that aren't unaware, if they're in their heart and they're doing good deeds and they're just good people, they may not be aware of the intricacies of what downloads from the sun are and uploads are from the earth. And it doesn't matter, because they're doing what they came here to do. And they're also helping us. And so if we take on this huge amount of responsibility, and I know I said with power comes more responsibility, and I want to kind of talk about that for a moment. The responsibility isn't us judging others or getting disgusted or feeling like we are better than them or they are dumb because they aren't aware of the things that we are aware of. That's a difficult balance sometimes for us to carry, because many of us, I mean, we're going to feel that way from time to time, because lately, especially, it does feel when I look around or I watch a video that someone sends me that there are people that are completely zombified. But I recognize, I cried the other day out of sadness for people that I watched something where people were responding. They're good people. They think they're doing the right thing, but they're missing the bigger picture. They're believing lies that is being fed to them, and they're regurgitating those lies, right? And then living their life and repeating those lies, which then enhances and builds a foundation of reality that is based in falseness. And they don't see it. And so I'm not going to dive into that any deeper. There's so many different layers of this going on right now. And that's where it becomes our responsibility to recognize that, to not go into the other end of the spectrum where we say, well, they're complete idiots because they don't understand. While that may be true from one perspective, idiocracy is a thing. it is also not our responsibility to place judgment on them. Does that make sense? It's not like we're not going to feel that from time to time. And it's not like but we can't just pat them on the head and say, oh, you nice human, you just don't get it. Because then that is the opposite. That's actually a lower vibration as well. That makes sense. So it's recognizing and holding the responsibility. That's their responsibility. That's on them. But we know what we need to do in order to hold our field and our vibration and integrate in our own reality, if that makes sense. So there's so many layers right now, and not getting sucked up into this judgment and anger and frustration all of the time is key. Balance it out. If you're feeling this way, it's normal. I feel it. And I want to talk about stages of grief. Oh boy, I could go into so many different places. So let's pause just for a moment and recognize, and this is just my own perspective, we're getting blasted. We're getting a lot of help from our guides, our ancestors, the earth, the sun, the planetary alignments, portals. We're getting blasted. Now, we could also say from that perspective, we're also getting blasted with the other stuff that isn't necessarily light. Well, everything is light because it's vibration, but anyways, frequency. But let's say, for this example, we're also getting blasted with technology, right? We've got energy that's blasting us through our internet and our phones and the towers and all that stuff, okay? In addition to that, there is a psychological blast that is going on constantly. And both of these experiences are hitting us at the same time. And then as a human, right, we're holding this charge, trying to balance out our own things while we're getting blasted. Family, friends, school, work, finances, right? So it is like triple, double, quadruple, wow, right now. Plus, we also are being upgraded. So while this is all happening, we are learning quickly. I've just got goosebumps everywhere. We're expanding. We're remembering past lives, future lives. We're remembering parallel things. Our timelines have a lot of bleed throughs right now. We're tapping into a deeper knowingness. And many of us are stepping up and going, whoa, wait a minute. I see, I hear. Ears are coming on, eyes are coming on, eyes to see, ears to hear. And our whole system is going through an upgrade. And that's a lot as well. So some people are starting to speak light language. Some people are starting to see the future or versions of the future. We'll say their intuitive creativity is coming on. Some people are starting to remember past lives, which is helping them to heal old wounds and trauma. And some people are just being very present. And while this happens, they're also clearing and integrating based on the experiences that they're having because they're getting blasted by all of this. It's everything. Now, all at once in this, I kept talking about, it looks like a rubber band ball. You guys ever seen the rubber bands? They're that big ball. That's what reality looks like to me right now energetically, or a yarn ball. Anyways, and we're pulling these big strings out, and it's like, if we don't, to separate this stuff that's all coagulated and stuck together, when we pull these rubber bands out, we get information from them, right? It stretches out, and if it stretches too much, it breaks. Otherwise, we can disentangle from it and let it dissolve, or recognize it, witness it. Anyways, so that has to do with timelines. It has to do with, realities. Okay. I'm going to pause just for a moment because I want to talk about the 5 stages of grief. Okay. So what I was shown that's happening to a lot of us. So I talked about the uploads and the blast that we're getting, and I could go into more detail on that maybe in a different video, possibly. We're getting blasted with everything between media and memories of past events that trigger certain feelings and frustrations and fears. I mean, everything, right? So kudos to you guys. Good job for just being here. Oh, and I want to talk about that too, because I didn't kind of go into the details on it's okay to feel these things, we have these fears that are going to come up. We have anger and frustration and blame and guilt and shame and all of it. Okay. But again, it's not about us just staying in that space, because it creates the heightened cortisol in the system, which then creates a chemical imbalance within the body. And when we get into a habit, and that's an example I gave earlier of the person who is unaware versus the aware. And I'm not talking about knowledge. There's this concept that because we know what's going on, that means we're doing the work. And that is not necessarily true. Just because we're aware doesn't mean we're taking the appropriate actions in order to not be in reaction. We can be aware of what's going on. And I'm kind of getting away from awake, because I'm just over that word right now. Everybody's awake to certain levels. Okay, that word has been hijacked. But are we aware of what it is we're awake to? Like, it's this sense of self-knowingness, a deeper knowingness beyond the self, the me. It's the sound behind the sound that I've talked about before. So here we are in this space, unaware, aware. And it isn't a competition. It isn't a hierarchy. It just is sometimes the way it is. But that doesn't mean that person is unaware of everything. They just may not be aware of what we are aware of. And this layer has different bubbles of what other people are aware of. We all have these layers. It's not just one thing. People think sometimes that because they know what's going on behind the scenes, that means that they're a light worker and they're doing the work. We're all light workers. We're all here in light working. But if we're not holding a vibration and frequency of compassion and forgiveness and love and processing and integration and recognizing and not reacting, but allowing ourselves to respond in the highest capacity that we have as a human to raise that frequency, or to consistently and coherently stay in that long wave, then we're just in that same boat. We're in that same category. Meaning, well, not category, but just because we're aware doesn't mean we're in love, doesn't mean we're in light. It doesn't mean we're holding a divine space of compassion. This other person who is unaware of what's going on they might be holding compassion. They may be unaffected by all of this because that's the way they are, because they've found this consistent thing. And it can be frustrating for those of us that are like, how could you not know the truth behind this? So there's levels of awareness. But again, it isn't about what we know necessarily. It's about how we respond to what we know. That's it. That's the big, that was a long way to go around to that message. But having said that, having compassion for ourselves when we recognize, oh my goodness, I have been in a place of judgment and anger towards this particular person, group, or entity for a while now. How do I get out of it? That could be a completely different video, but I'll just briefly go into it. How do we get out of that? How do we move through that? So I guess this is important because I'm getting goosebumps everywhere. People are finding it difficult to move past it or to move through it. It's like this resistance. What we resist persists. And how can we? It's challenging. We're constantly being inundated by reasons to feel angry, to get frustrated, to feel sad, right? So it's this constant assault on our senses of senselessness. So it is challenging, but we've done this. We've been doing the work. It's all about getting back to the basics. Keep it simple. The reason I started this channel in the first place, one of the reasons I call it Keep It Simple Starseeds, well, on Instagram, is because we overcomplicate things. It's like, we know all of this, we have to reveal it. Well, do we? Maybe yes, and it is being revealed. That might be true, but how are we responding to it? If we're in anger constantly, we are not we're not holding the line. We're part of I don't want to call it the problem, but we're part of this lower vibration and frequency. I think and it doesn't, and we're going to oscillate. That's kind of what I want to get to. So how do we work through that? Well, acknowledging, right? I have moments of pure frustration and anger that come up daily. So I had a beautiful session with the light worker the other day, and she's like, how I feel so angry. And I'm like, me too. And that might seem surprising for some of us to recognize that. Like, wow, I'm pissed. Yeah, you're human. We're seeing a lot of things that are going to piss us off. And then, are we processing it? How do we work through it? Well, the other day I was angry, and I just had to step away because I've been a little bit up and down with my husband. And he's going through his own stuff. So it's not fair for me to continually be doing this. And we have worked through a lot of things together, which is beautiful. If you have someone you can talk to about it, great. But again, not perpetuating the same subject matter over and over again, or recognizing if we are, and then taking a break from it, taking a step back, which he and I have both called each other on that, which has been interesting. And it's actually created a deeper level of awareness of each other, which is another video we can talk about. So my point is that I stepped outside and just gardened. I went and just weeded, trimmed some plants. And as I did this, I realized I was going through different phases. I was going through different stages. I was angry and frustrated. And as I did this, all the reasons I was angry and frustrated first I noticed there was a loop. So first I noticed, whoa, I've been thinking about this one subject matter for the last 15, like it's coming up for the last 15 minutes. As soon as I recognized that it was repeating itself in my head, I stopped it, because you have to see it. Otherwise, it's just this thing that keeps going back here, and all of a sudden we don't recognize it. And so everything that we do keeps us in that looping pattern. So I recognized I was in a looping pattern. I recognized what it was creating in my body. And as soon as I acknowledged it and stopped and went, oh, wow, that's interesting, I recognized I got frustrated with myself for not seeing it sooner. I was frustrated with myself of how I responded, right, in my environment. And then I realized I was doing that. And I instantly felt better. And it was subtle, but it released that entity that was being created as this story in the back of my mind, playing over and over and over again. And it's not necessarily the same. I'm being guided to share. Like, we might think it's about one subject, right? Name your subject that we're being blasted about right now. But then there's different bubbles that are created because of that subject. Conversations with friends, conversations with coworkers, situations we're experiencing at work. So all of those were repeating in my head, not just about the subject matter, but 10 different bubbles that were all attached to that subject matter. So as soon as I recognized the main loop, it helped me just to pop those bubbles. And then I was like, what's left? Breathe. And I realized I just felt better being outside. I realized that, and I literally made that one shift that then brought me out of the lower energies up into a more coherent space. Did I feel magical and sunshine and rainbows? Well, a little by the time I was done, but it took me an hour to work through that in increments. So it's okay. Just acknowledging it and walk away. If you're being triggered by someone, step outside of the room. Say, you know what, I'll be right back. Or I just need a moment to just kind of regain I'm feeling a little funny right now. Be honest. I don't feel very good. Do you mind just walk away so that you don't react to the unconsciousness? I say that with love, an awareness of the other individual, and recognize they might be feeling the same way about different things. They might be feeling the same way about the same subject matter, and they might completely disagree on the subject matter. I could go on and on, whatever those bubbles are. So gardening was how I did it. Go and beat up your pillow. If you have a pillow in your bedroom, go scream in your pillow. Have a pillow fight with the mattress or the bench or the couch. Stomp, throw a tantrum, scream if you're alone. And then see, do I feel better? Most likely you're going to feel better because you exerted some energy and you were able just to get it out. But you might not feel better. Go for a walk. Focus on your breathing. Don't put on YouTube or Instagram and listen to the next event. Or just sometimes, though, doing that does help. You know, it might take 5 minutes of light language or binaural beats to just kind of give you that little boost just to work through whatever's going on. And then you may feel more empowered because you've done those other activities to then address and work through the situation. But we have to acknowledge it first. We can't deny our human feelings. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be human, right? Okay, so what I've been experiencing daily is the 5 stages of grief. I was shown this by my guides, and so I just want to talk about this. And I invite you guys, anybody else feeling this? Denial, anger, bargaining. I don't know if I've been bargaining. Yeah, maybe. Depression and acceptance. Now, I've been feeling like there's other things in here because what I've recognized is that many of us are grieving. Many of us are in a place of lamenting. Many of us are feeling lost, lonely, fearful, sad, because the old version of us, and what does that represent? It's our social, it's our political, it's our economic, it's our physical, it's our relationships, everything. That old version is no longer what it was. So for many people, it feels like a loss. We're at a loss. And when we lose something, many people feel like they've lost themselves. But what we have to take, we don't have to, but what I invite you to do is take a step back and recognize that none of those things are us. They're not who we are at the core, but we've attached ourselves so strongly to that identity and identifying with these groups, these beliefs, these old structures. And now we're being blasted with the fact that maybe none of that is real. None of that was what we thought it was. None of that was what we were programmed, or we programmed ourselves. Because again, it's taking responsibility. It's recognizing that we programmed ourselves oftentimes. Yes, people fed us lies, and yes, we accepted those. But why? Part of it, I always go, why? Go a little deeper, ask questions. Why? Because that's another stage that I'm seeing right now. People are not thinking for themselves because they have been taught or corralled or, right? So critical thinking, but the critical thinking that many people are doing, they think they're doing based on the story that they bought into. So it's like reading half of a book. They have one half, we have the whole book. And they're saying, no, this is real. And we're like, yeah, but you never read the end, or vice versa. You never read the foreword. You missed 43 books. I'm making a reference here, or 42 books. There were 43 books that were taken out. So we don't have the whole picture. So here we are building a reality based on 5 chapters. And those beings really think they're right, because based on the information that they have chosen to look at, believe in, and value, they are right. Kind of. But then if they read the rest of the book of life, I'm not referencing religion, by the way, when I say book of life, I literally mean our chapters and what we're writing now, they might realize that that doesn't apply anymore, or that was created as one version. And so what are we missing? Is there more to this than meets the eye? So having said that, that's part of what we're feeling, and we're recognizing that certain people aren't doing their own work. They're just they're taking what's being fed, and they're taking that on as their own, that's what they're working on. So this creates this disconnect, not only through our human collective, but also creates a disconnect from certain synapses in our brain and our hearts, because we're not using our body. If we're senseless, we're not connecting the dots, we aren't getting with the program. We instead are part of the program, and we just don't realize it. It's like the Matrix, right? So I kind of got lost there a little bit in 5 different subject matter, trying to stay on track. I'm going to pause just for a moment. So this creates a disconnect not only from each other, but between our brain and our heart and our common sense. So common sense isn't even the right word, but let's take that and play with that a little bit. Come on, sense. Like the senses, we are creating it's a desensitizing, because it becomes such a program within us. And I'm going back to acknowledging where we're at. And I won't go into, that's a whole other video because I've got more information on that. But right now I want to get back to how can we work through this, and how can we get back to our state of presence and compassion and awareness. Because if we are unaware of what programs we're feeding in our own looping habits, this happens, I react, I get angry, and I say things that I regret, then I feel shame, then I blame myself, and I go into judgment, and I'm mad at myself, and then I go into depression, and I eat an entire pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and then I beat myself up because I don't feel good, and then I, see where this goes. I'm just using that as one example. Not that I've ever done that. Yes, I have. So sometimes it's okay to do that and just go, oh, I did that. Wow. Taking responsibility for my actions then makes me conscious and aware of what I am, what my actions are. Why? Again, digging a little deeper. Why am I doing this? Let's even go further and say, well, maybe we just don't ask why, but we recognize we're doing it. And sometimes the answer of why we're doing it will just show up, especially right now, because things have shifted so dramatically. So I'm going to go back into the stages of grief, because my reaction that I have been feeling is because it's not just about me and my reality either. I'm witnessing friends and families and just everybody. I see them going through it, and many of us are feeling this responsibility to then process those emotions for the collective. So I want to talk about that just for a moment, because again, it's responsibility. With power comes responsibility. When we work on ourselves, we are part of the collective. It is a ripple effect. We then change the geometry. Literally, our geometry, we change our life, which then affects the tree of life. And I'm not, by the way, I want to just back up again, nothing to do with religion or, oh, that's part of this program or that's part of that program. It doesn't matter. We are a living entity that is connected to all things. It is quantum. We are quantum. Therefore, whenever we take action on ourselves from a conscious and aware level and compassionate level, we become unprogrammed. We become the programmers. We create the program. Therefore, it makes us unaffected, or let me rephrase that, it makes the other programs unable to affect us in such a way. And I'm being guided to share cause and effect. So if we're falling in that loop and we've got these patterns, this little bug that just loves me. What happens then is I talked about this before, we leak our charge. We lose our charge and we're giving it to the program. And then the program has us. But once we change those patterns and recognize them, I see you, boom, poof, we're out of the program. This can happen at different times throughout the day right? Sometimes we're in it, sometimes we're not. But the more conscious and conscientious we become about ourselves, then we are doing the work. And it isn't about us and them. It never was about us versus them. I know that's a brand. I get so like, here I go, triggered. When I see that, I'm like, perfect, perpetuating this us versus them. We move away from that. We recognize that as I do this, I am creating this reality, this bubble, and I am programming my own body and my environment to respond to me. And heart math talks about this. It's coherence. We then expand out our field. I think it's 15 feet. We go from 3 feet or even smaller of anger and frustration to 15 feet, right? Of I'm in my space of awareness. So the grief, what happens is, especially if we're living with a family member or a partner or a roommate, their reality is being affected all the time, just as ours is, but we're sharing it, right? So that can be very challenging when our siblings or family members are going through something, because that can then trigger us to want to be able to fix it for them and help them and make them more aware. But that isn't our responsibility. Even as parents, now I don't have children, so I know that that's sometimes it is our responsibility, but sometimes we have to take a step back, right? I see this with my mom and I see this with all my friends that have children, and let them figure it out. Otherwise, what's the point of them being an individual? That means they're just, it's like being the same person. Okay. So the stages of grief, one more time: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Now, the bargaining, it says the hope that the individual can avoid a cause of grief. Usually the negotiation for an extended whatever is made in exchange for a reformed lifestyle. So it talks about compromise. Now, I'm not knocking the 5 stages of grief here, and this is having to do with death. That's what I was getting back to. So we are going through a process of rebirth. And energetically, this death of the old is dying all around us. We're seeing it. But from one perspective, it isn't really. It's just changing and shifting. We have this attachment to it. Therefore, we're in resistance to our idea that we're losing something. And while this temporarily may be, we are losing, I'm being guided to share that that's just not the right word. But it feels like we're losing on so many levels, right? We've lost this, we've lost that, we're losing freedom, we're losing friends, we're losing financial abundance, we're losing our way of life. However, while this process is happening, once we come into a place of acceptance of, okay, well, this is where we are. We can't deny any longer. We can't try to compromise. We just have to recognize. We don't have to, but I'm just being guided to share. Once we recognize and come into acceptance, and by the way, I want to back up because I see a lot of people going, well, I'm not going to accept this. This song, my friend Candace posted this, and I was feeling it the same exact day. What's the song? Rage Against the Machine. The other day I had Rage Against the Machine playing over and over again on a loop in my head. Right? I have goosebumps. I think a lot of people are playing this over and over the head. I won't do what you told me. Because there is this sense of, I'm not going to accept the reality you're projecting onto me. That is not my reality. It isn't about just giving up and rolling over and saying, I'm just, okay, I accept it. Do your worst. That's not what it is. From my perspective, it's about recognizing that there are things going on around that I have no ability to control for right now, but I can control how I react and how I take action. And that action from a place of balanced compassion isn't rage. Although rage may be part of one of the stages that I'm feeling that I need to integrate and process. If that makes sense. So anger is something that is massive right now. And it comes through for me in waves. And I just have to integrate it, right? Rage, anger, frustration. I found myself giving someone a dirty look the other day because they had all these stickers on their car representing who they thought they were. And I was just in that space where I was like, oh, really? And then I went, wow, okay, that was on me. So I canceled here, deleted that. And it just was a split second. Because for those of us that are not aware, oh, my dog is going kind of crazy. So if I would have been stuck in that loop, it would have carried over into my trip to the grocery store. I may have been cranky or rude to someone because I was in my program, which means I'm in their program because that's not who I really am. That's, if that makes sense. In session the other day, one of the things that came through about the anger was water. So I went out and I grounded. It's the elements, right? We are really being invited to work with the elements right now. So drink more water, get into the water, and intention. So set our intention to integrate it, clear it, recognize why I'm feeling this way, if that is available for us. Sometimes we don't know why until later, and not overanalyzing it. Get back into the senses, and just get in a body of water. If it's a shower, go take a quick cold shower. It really does work. I get a lot of information and ahas whenever I'm in water. So right now, to counter anger, what I've been guided to do is water. This came through with this particular client and light worker because that was a powerful, some of us are drawn to more elements. This particular person was earth and water. Other people, it's fire, so that could be go and have a bonfire, write down all the things you're angry about, fold it up in a piece of paper and burn it. And give it to the smoke spirits, give it to source, return that to source so it can be integrated energetically. Whew, goosebumps. It's ceremony, ritual. That is us being aware and not getting stuck in the looping patterns. How do I break it? Take a cold shower, go out and have a fire ceremony, put it in a pot on your stove or a barbecue. I don't know if you want to put it in the house, but barbecue it. Burn that away. Let that, think of the rising phoenix, because that's what we're going through. Death, rebirth, transmutation, right? Transmuting, moving through, morphing, transforming, right? All of that. And not to mention air, breathing. I love my friend Kat. She goes, I'm just going to Wim Hof that away. I'm going to Wim Hof that shit. So breathing. I think he does a lot of things with ice water. I mean, play with these things, do whatever we need to do right now, because otherwise, again, we become part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I don't even like to use the word problem and solve, but for those of us that are analytical, logical thinkers, this is kind of, how it looks. So these stages of grief, many of us are going through them. So the other day I was feeling all of those things. I felt sadness. I cried because I watched someone treat someone else with complete and utter disassociation. And then I had a moment of clarity because I recognized that person isn't even in their body. They aren't even aware. And so I realized I was in ego because I was like, how could that person be so cold and not aware? But it doesn't matter. It's not my job to figure out why that person is doing what they're doing. And then I had compassion but not from a place of, oh, that poor person. That's sympathy. And sympathy is different than compassion. It isn't about me sympathizing with anything right now. I mean, we can feel sympathy for someone, but it's more of this feeling of I'm not going, because then I don't need to understand why, because and sometimes I do need to understand why. And sometimes I'll get the answer. Well, this is happening. They feel that way because of this. And that can help us sometimes process. So if we understand why someone is doing what they're doing, sometimes that'll help us go, oh, well, I don't agree with it, but I can see from a broader perspective why they feel that way. If we're still angry about it though, or we're still in frustration or blame over it, then that didn't really help the situation. I get a lot of people that go, why? It doesn't matter why they're doing what they're doing, but I can share with you why from one perspective. But does that change how you feel about it? It could. So just different techniques. Okay. And recognizing that we are in the grieving process, recognizing that there are stages in this, and every day is different. I want to just end by saying my frustration, anger, shame, sadness, blame, whatever, judgment, it's like moment to moment to moment to moment, integrate, process, integrate, acceptance. And acceptance is a tricky word. It isn't about me saying, okay, I'm going to do what they're doing because I'm accepting. No, that's not it. I'm staying in my own sovereignty. And I accept that this is a particular situation that I'm going to have to figure out how to learn to live with temporarily. Everything that's happening right now, I keep getting the message over and over and over again. Be patient. This is temporary. And if you find yourself going, I've been patient long enough, then we know that we're in a different place, a different vibration, and it could be ego. Are we in ego right now? It's okay. That's human. Let's integrate that. Why do I feel as if I've been patient long enough? Because it's actually being patient as long as it takes. Because there's going to be things that, or I've done enough work. That's it. I'm done. Okay. That then just threw us into another category, put us into a separation. It put us into a hierarchy, maybe with ourselves. What's the other one? I said, being patient is temporary. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. I've had several things happen to me this week. Well, this whole month, really. It's been a very intense month for me personally, where I had to be patient. And that was the hardest part for me. And while I recognized I had to be patient, it was like, well, how come these people can't make up their mind about this? This is not fair. It's not right. It's rude. Yes. And it is what it is. I have to accept that that's what they're doing. And then I had to come into a place of accepting that I'm labeling them because I don't know their reasoning. I don't really know what it is they're going through. Therefore, by me calling that person a name, what does that do to my energy? What is that doing to my charge? Where is that leak in my energy field going? So I'm going to end on that note. This was quite a long video, and maybe I'll do more. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this now moment. I just want to say, you guys, we're in it. We've been in it, and we're going to continue to be in it. But we are in this with a lot of help, with one another, with so much that we are accessing, and we are capable of so much more than oftentimes we give ourselves credit for. And I see that over and over again. Being a human is so valuable and so beautiful. We don't know this sometimes until we go through these experiences, and then we look back and go, wow, I learned so much. I processed so much. I grew so much. Of course, when we're going through it and when we're in it, that's the hardest time. And oftentimes we're flooded, and it can be so overwhelming that just processing it is all we can do. And that's okay. So I hope this helps someone. And in love and light. Namaste, guys.